So, of course, one of the big things we have to mention is this historic, monumentous occasion that happened over the weekend. That this is the first phase of Trump's negotiation, this peace deal. A very historic Middle East peace negotiation summit that happened under Donald Trump, Qatar, Hamas, and Israel. That this is the first phase negotiations that all the hostages, the remaining 20 from Israel's side, and some of the Palestinians, not all of them, there's still very much Palestinians in captivity, but this is the first step into possible peace in the Middle East with this hostage exchange. And I just want to show people some of the headlines about this. So the BBC reporting Israeli hostages and Palestinian detainees. Now, I want to show this in particular because of how they're still trying to frame this, how they're still trying to use the verbiage to twist this into one side. Notice how they say Israeli hostages, and then when they talk about Palestinians, they refer to as detainees. They don't refer to them as hostages. They don't refer to them as kept in captivity. They still try to make the argument that, well, there's still, many in there because of criminal behavior or criminal mischief, even though they don't have records to prove that or any court case. They have not been sent on trial. There's no fair trial for them. They're just locked in prison for the assumption that they're criminals. And, the BBC reporting this and using that kind of verbiage is twisting this into a one side versus the other instead of just releasing the hostages. It should be the focal point of this, that both Palestinians and Israelis are reuniting with their families. They're finally going home after all the mayhem, after all the craziness, after the continuation of the Israeli genocide, and just how barbaric it's become to the fact that they're using and abusing a lot of these hostages for the extended purpose of conducting this genocide. So here's just a bit of clip here to show people, this is from CNN, of one of the Israeli hostages coming back, one of the Israeli hostages coming back to see their families.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. אמן.
יש לך שתי ידיים, שתי רגליים. איך אני ידעתי לך אבא?
So it was a very emotional weekend, reuniting with someone that's been kept in captivity for over 2 years now, and coming back to see their families, making sure that, they are that now still alive, and a lot of them have been perished, and there's still a lot of remaining bodies that they have to dig up from the rubble of destroying Gaza and destroying the West Bank. They still have to search and scavenge the remains of the people that were killed, which is going to take a long extended period, which, again, this is a long process. So for people to say that this is done and over with, don't realize the scale of this, that this is only a small step into the longevity of this peace deal. It's a 21-step deal. And this is only the first phase of this. So we don't know exactly if this is going to go fully played out. We don't know what the extent of this is. We don't know what Netanyahu has up in his sleeves. We know that, as soon as he left Washington, he already announced that he was going to intentionally violate the ceasefire agreement, that he pretty much has America in his back pocket, that he could do whatever he wants, and there's no hostility towards him. There's no, tension that Trump is putting against Netanyahu. So there's a lot at stake at this. The battle may be over when it comes to hostages, but the war is not done. So you just saw the Israeli side of things, but you don't see a lot of the Palestinians returning back to their families. You don't see a lot of that on mainstream media. So I want to highlight this. This is from Sarah Wilkinson, who says, after being illegally exiled to Cairo in Egypt, a festive atmosphere greets the dozens of Palestinian hostages finally released by the Israeli regime. So here's the IDF releasing the Palestinians back into the families of Palestinians, and here's their little celebration on that. So you can see the big crowds, all the families gathering together, reuniting with loved ones that were kept in captivity by the IDF the same way Israelis were kept in captivity by Hamas. Both sides had hostages. They did the exchange. So this should be a happy moment, right? This should be celebratory. This should be very emotional for people. I'm sure that, a lot of people, took this as a sigh of relief that now we're finally getting some, calm after the storm, that we're finally, relieving ourselves from this. So you think that the tensions would try to, phase out, right? That when you go onto social media, when you go onto X or TikTok or any other platform, there wouldn't be such uprising or, this divisive material to try to further escalate tensions. You would think that. But unfortunately, that's not the case, because there's always something to keep war activated. There's always got to be something to keep the war powers activated. So here, for example, is the, expert dildo salesman, Rabbi Shmuley, who, instead of making this a celebratory moment, trying to find peace and try to find some humanity into this, is going to elevate tensions. He's going to take the opportunity of the hostage exchange to elevate more aggression instead of trying to decrease it, instead of trying to find, commonality, try to unite people, try to, gain back, some of the lost reputation and respect that he's had for quite an extended time now. He's trying to amplify more of the aggression, more against the Palestinians, because they don't want this war to end. The people that are on social media that are saying this, they don't want the war to end. So Rabbi Shmuley says, amidst the celebrations, watching how every female hostage was murdered, not one female hostage survivor, is sickening beyond words. Hamas are animals and Nazis. So, Rabbi Shmuley is, again, trying to make an excuse. This should be a happy moment. This should be a sigh of relief. This should be a moment to take in on the fact that we can finally settle down and get some peace and get some perspective of what happened over the past 2 years. He's trying to amplify it by saying, oh, what about the women? What about the women? It's sickening. We still got to be angry at Hamas. Hamas, animals, Nazis, inhuman, disgusting, pigs, terrorists. Urgh. They still are trying to amplify this as much as possible. And what surprises me, because I know Rabbi Shmuley is not dumb. He's not an idiot. He's not a retard. He's a very particular person who understands that the female hostages were the first ones to get released when they had their first ceasefire agreement. They were the first ones that got released. The remaining 20 Israeli hostages that got freed are mostly male, military-age males. And they did that intentionally. They released the females first so that the mothers can go back to their children, that they can then go back to their families and help their loved ones and whatnot. But they kept the military-age men. And that's the final stage of this hostage deal, is the remaining 20 are military-age males. So Rabbi Shmuley knows this, but he's going to be a bad faith actor and lie to you to try to amplify more of this war. Instead of trying to de-escalate the situation and try to find peace in this time, he's going to try and escalate it with this. And not just him. Here's lunatic Laura Loomer also doing the same thing. All the female hostages are dead. Where's the outrage? Savages. Again, Laura Loomer, the so-called expert researcher, can easily point out that the female hostages were the first ones released. So these are obvious lies. These are obvious lies being peddled by these accounts. And it's amazing that all these accounts, all these pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist, pro-amplifying war powers accounts, all sound similar. All sound very, very similar in their wording, in their verbiage, in their tones, which makes me think that they're not thinking this themselves, that they're being programmed to do this, or they're being told to, or maybe they're just taking something they saw and just regurgitating what they saw there. Like they're trying to take an AP story off the ticker and rewrite it. That's how, news agencies operate. So maybe that's what they're doing. They're just taking what they see from the ticker and just regurgitating it. Well, what about the female hostages? Outrage! We still got to be angry at Hamas. We still got to go after Palestinians. Again, female hostages were the first ones released. And here's another guy. Again, they're not dumb. They're not dumb. They're purposely lying to you. They're bad faith actors intentionally taking a moment of a hostage exchange to try to amplify more of this war, because it wasn't about the hostages. Just like we told you. It's not about the hostages. It's not about peace. They do not want the Palestinians to exist. Period. That's the mindset. That's the mentality of the ultra-Zionist death cult that has encapsulated a lot of these people. Here's this guy, Joey Marino. Hamas killed all the remaining female hostages. Only men survived. That entire region has no respect for women. This is why they can never welcome in the West. Again, leaving out the fact that those hostages were already released. They were the first round of people that were released. So here's Sandra reminding people there's a new lie going around that all the female hostages were killed by Hamas. Like every other thing that comes out of the Israeli gob, it's another big fat lie. Remember, when they said they were all pregnant, they were released first. And that's what we saw. We saw videos. We saw evidence. There was news articles all about this. Here's from The Guardian. From 8 months ago, 3 female hostages released first by Hamas under the ceasefire agreement. So this is the first round. The very first round of ceasefire agreement, of hostage exchange that they did, that Israel failed to live up to the standards. They violated the ceasefire agreement. And that's why people are on edge. Why, for me in particular, I'm on edge about this, is because this is only the first step. So thinking that releasing the hostages is one and done and it's over with, it's not one and done. You may have won the battle, but the war's still going on. And we won't know if the war is over until we know for sure that the IDF, Netanyahu, have no capability to commit further atrocities. That they are no longer further extending their powers, their military deterrence to go after Palestinians, Israelis, and Lebanese, and Arabs, and Jewish people, and whatsoever, to further decimate for the greater Israeli project. Unless we know that that's over, the war is still continuing. The war is still going on. And that's why, I bring this to attention, because Ben Shapiro, Ben the Weasel Shapiro, made a huge statement about this, about how the fact that, well, we got the hostages back, so why are people still angry about this? Why are pro-Palestinian people not celebrating? Like, I thought we were supposed to release the hostages and the war is over. Like, shut up. Why are you guys still angry about this? Why are you not celebrating Trump's victory plan? So here's Ben Shapiro telling people that he thinks that the pro-Palestinians that aren't, celebrating victoriously about the hostage exchange, that, their intent is the fact that they're all anti-Semites, that they want to kill Jewish people, that they're intended to go and slaughter the rest of the Israelis, which is not the case. It's not the case. It may be the case of maybe some Zionists that use anti-Semitic tropes to further their cause, because Zionists are ferociously anti-Semites against Jewish people, against Christians, against Muslims, against anyone that is not in their cult. But it is not the intent of pro-Palestinians. Pro-Palestinians know that the war is not over, that there's still a lot of time between this phase of the peace talk and the end of the 21-step program. And a lot of things can happen. A lot of things can happen. We don't know what Netanyahu is have up his sleeve. So here's Ben Shapiro going ballistic on the fact that pro-Palestinians are not celebrating this. So take a look.
There are a bunch of protests that took place all over the world in favor of Hamas as the president was trying to negotiate a ceasefire. Now, by the way, you've seen no Palestinians or advocates for the Palestinians abroad celebrating President Trump's ceasefire. None. Zero. They don't exist. They all disappeared. Now, I'm not sure if I've ever heard of a genocide in world history in which the supposed victims of the genocide don't celebrate when it ends. Right? That's kind of telling, is it not? Shouldn't there be hundreds of thousands of these people in the streets celebrating Donald Trump?
So, leaving out the fact that we just witnessed Palestinians celebrating the release of their family members or loved ones that are now reunited, he's saying that, well, people here are not celebratory about Donald Trump's peace plan. No, that's not the case. We're worried. We understand that Trump's doing the right thing in having this negotiation, but we worry that Netanyahu is not going to live up to the ability to fulfill this peace negotiation. That's the thing, is that Israel, are they going to live up to this peace deal? Just like they failed to do every other peace deal. Just like we've seen every other attempt of a ceasefire, of a hostage exchange go horribly wrong, because Netanyahu has tricks up his sleeve to continue facilitating this war, because it was never about the hostages. It was never about the hostages. It was never about October 7th. This has been going on since 1947. So thinking that this is one and done, that over a weekend you're going to wrap up this war that's been going on for 70 plus years, that's not going to be the case. And again, Ben Shapiro knows this. He definitely does. He's not an idiot, but he's a bad faith actor for lying to you about this. He's lying directly to his audience. That's why people, even watching him, his own audience, can see right through him. No wonder why the Daily Wire went belly up. Because people can see right through this.
For ending the war? For getting to a ceasefire? For stopping the carnage? Shouldn't they be celebrating? But they're not. Where are they? Why did they disappear? Because they didn't give a the entire time about the Palestinians. They didn't care about them at all. It was all just a weapon against Israel. Because if they were truly concerned about the cost of war, they would be happy when it ends. Instead, they were protesting for the war to effectively continue on October 7th. Here was ABC News admitting that there was violence at pro-Palestinian protests on the second anniversary of October 7th. This is ABC's Good Morning America.
Demonstrators mark 2 years of war since the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. And in Boston, there were clashes with police. Boston police said 13 pro-Palestinian demonstrators were arrested. Several officers were injured. A march from Boston Common called Students for Justice in Palestine spilled into the street there, blocking traffic. The crowd waving Palestinian flags, throwing red-colored powder into the air. Police said protesters turned on them, kicking a marked cruiser, setting off smoke flares and assaulting officers, 2 of them taken to the hospital with broken bones. Police used bikes to block the crowd and were seen arresting demonstrators on the ground. Here in New York, 2 protesters were arrested outside the Israeli consulate. Elsewhere in the city, dueling protests, one accusing Israel of loving war, another calling to release the hostages, chanted back and forth.
Okay, so again, notice those 2 contrasting messages at the very end. One says, Israel loves war, and one is, release our hostages. Like, the moral imbalance there is pretty amazing. And who are these people? They're a bunch of left-wing scavengers, college students with sociology degrees who have decided they're going to stand with terrorism and stand with evil because their civilization is to blame for all the problems on Earth. This is why you had protesters on October 7th shouting, globalize the Intifada.
Sure. That's what's going on. It's these damn college kids that are supporting terrorists. You know, that's why they hand-selected a former Al-Qaeda leader to be the president of Syria. Oh, wait! That was the United States government. So if you want to talk about terrorist supporting, just like I told people back when, you know, Mark Carney and Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron and the Australian Prime Minister, all of them talked about how they were going to recognize the Palestinian state, and people went up in arms and saying, how dare you celebrate terrorism? You're rewarding Hamas. You're rewarding a terrorist group. And I said to people, no one rewards terrorism better than the United States, because the United States ultimately creates terror around the world. You realize that the Syrian president is the former leader of Al-Qaeda who had a $20,000 bounty on him prior to assuming position of president. That now they're shaking hands at the UN and in Washington, D.C. in front of a former CIA agent. Like, how crazy that is. How crazy that is that he could sit there and look at these protesters and say, oh yeah, they're a bunch of terrorist simps, and not realize that the biggest terrorist simps are the people that are representing you, because they're uplifting terror. They're bringing more terror. In order to have wars on terror, you have to manufacture the terror. Hence why there's a constant war machine happening. Remember, Dwight D. Eisenhower warned people in the 1960s. His exit speech was about the military-industrial complex. But no, let's focus on these bratty college students, because they don't understand. They don't understand that protesting October 7th about releasing the hostages that weren't released until yesterday. Yes, they're ultimately the terrible ones. They're terrorist sympathizers like, oh my God. Again, Ben Shapiro is not a moron, just like Laura Loomer, although questionably she is a lunatic, and Rabbi Shmuley. They're just bad faith actors. They're propagandists. They're lying to you. And people are smart enough to see right past this. They can easily look this up. They can go Google search all this material. It's out in the open. I've told this many times before. If you really want to know what's happening in the Middle East, you want to know what's happening with Israel and Gaza, go right to the source. Go right to Israeli publications, because they're not afraid to reveal all the information. They're not afraid to be outspoken about their atrocities. The American media does. The Canadian media definitely does. The UK media is definitely going to cover up material. But Israeli media, they're out loud and proud about how nefarious they are. And here's an example of this that just happened recently. This is from Haaretz, Israeli publication. So, moments after Donald Trump announced the peace deal, announcing the release of hostages, as people are saying that, oh, this war is over, wrap up, celebrate, be done and over with, shut the hell up. This is still happening. And this is why, for me in particular, I'm not going to be celebratory, because I know that this battle, yes, the hostages are saved. That's good. But the war ain't over. The war ain't over. And the war isn't going to be over until there's a mass amount of pressure on Netanyahu to stop perpetuating this genocide, this ethnic cleansing, to stop the Greater Israeli Project, to stop the Zionist death cult, wish of annexing all of Palestine and taking over the region. So here's Haaretz. Israeli settlers burn cars, attack Palestinian farmers in West Bank. IDF fires tear gas. Footage shows olive harvesters threatened by settlers who damaged their equipment. On Friday, settlers wounded 7 people in an attack which the town's deputy mayor called the most violent, extreme, and brutal in recent years. And that's from October 12th. So this is moments after Trump announced a peace deal. Moments after, you have Israeli settlers going to the West Bank, brutalizing farmers. Brutalizing farmers. Oh, I guess they're Hamas. I guess they're a bunch of terrorists in disguise. I guess growing all those olive trees and corn and soybeans and all the vegetation to feed people. Yeah, that's all to feed terrorists. Animals. This is why people are not, more excited about this. This is why people are not going to shut up about this, because the war is still going on, folks. They want you to be done and over with. They want you to turn the page, go into the next chapter. Those are the words of Ursula von der Leyen, who congratulated this. Oh, we got to turn the page. We got to be done and over with. This massive atrocity that we slaughtered a bunch of Palestinians with our tax dollars. We got to just turn the page. Really? We got to be done and over with. We can't mention about this. No. Turn the page. Forget about it. But, you're told to always remember the Holocaust. You're always told to remember about Auschwitz. You're always told about, it's important to remember those genocides. But we got to turn the page and wipe the slate clean when it comes to the slaughter of Palestinians or the slaughter of Armenians during the Armenian genocide. Like, there's many things we could be talking about. Sudan. It's amazing. It's amazing. They want you to remind yourself about the Holocaust and Auschwitz and the horrific things that Germany did to Jewish people, but they don't want you to talk about what Israelis did to Palestinians. Kind of remarkable in that way. Here's the New Republic. They said, be glad the hostages are home. Be worried about the rest. There is reason to hope for peace in Palestine. There is also reason to remain on guard. And that's the thing. That's why people are still, on edge about this, that they're not going to be silent about this. They're not going to shut up. They're not going to turn a page. They're not going to go the next chapter and ignore all the atrocity that happened, because the war is not over. Yes, you got the hostages back. That's great. I'm happy for that. That's a sigh of relief to know that the victims that were taken October 7th and the Palestinians that were kept in captivity, they're released to back to their families. That's great. That gives us a sign of relief. That doesn't mean the war is over, though. That doesn't mean it's over. And considering the fact that Trump has not put the pressure on someone like Netanyahu, who Netanyahu himself already admitted on camera that he's already violating this agreement. Violating. He went and bombed Qatar when Hamas and the United States organized a peace summit on the same day that Charlie Kirk got assassinated. Just how eerie that is, that they figured out the timing that America would be distracted enough to realize that Israel interrupted and destroyed the chance of a peace summit. And now here we are, Trump going full extent to having this peace summit. And we know that Netanyahu does not agree with this. Netanyahu wants this war to keep going on. One, for, the Greater Israeli Project. And two, once this war wraps up, he is tried with a lot of criminal charges that the Israeli courts are going to go after him. Not just internationally, but the Israeli courts will hold him captive of his criminal attributions, which he doesn't want to hold to contempt. So he wants to keep this war going as long as it takes. That's why people are on edge of this. Here's the cradle. Israel violates ceasefire with deadly attacks on Palestinians in Gaza. 9 Palestinians were killed less than 24 hours after U.S. and Arab states signed the ceasefire deal with Sharm el-Sheikh. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But there you go, 24 hours after Trump's peace deal. So unless Trump has the ability, which I doubt, because we know that the entire political system in America, much like elsewhere in the world, is completely corroded by the corruption of AIPAC and a lot of billionaire donors that also pledged allegiance to Israel. Unless you put pressure on Netanyahu and cutting off the funding, I've said this before, that the best way to end this war is to cut off the funding, cut off the ability, cut off the source that allows for the execution of a genocide. Cut off the military aid, cut off the spending, cut off the ability to further facilitate these atrocities. The same goes with Ukraine. The same goes with any war. Once you cut off the funds and realize that Israel cannot survive on its own, through its own economy, through its own merit, because the economy is crashing in Israel. A lot of people are fleeing. There's a brain drain in Israel. Once they realize that Israel cannot self-sustain itself with this war and the other bombings that they're doing simultaneously, then the war is going to end. But Trump's not going to do that. So this is why it's not a very celebratory moment. It's a sigh of relief when it comes to hostages, but this ain't over yet. It ain't over yet. And here's Netanyahu. Already, this is on October 7th, the 2-year anniversary. So when Ben Shapiro's like, why are people still protesting? Why are people so angry? Why are people so violent? They want the hostages released, but they also say Israel's war-loving. Like, how crazy that is. Why would they just shut up? Maybe because of this. Maybe because the Prime Minister of Israel openly stated about maybe possibly threatening the United States. He doesn't say his country in particular, but you get the wink, wink, nudge, nudge of what he's stating here. So Netanyahu is building a narrative that Israel's starting a war with Iran and dragging the U.S. into it. It is ultimately aimed at defending the U.S. itself. The man who pushed for the war in Iraq now claims that Iran will soon pose a nuclear threat to Miami, New York, Boston, etc. So now he's building the narrative to fearmonger the United States into being complicit with their war against Iran. Like I said, this ain't over. This ain't over until this kind of mentality completely ends. So here's Netanyahu openly on camera threatening the United States to be complicit with war.
Iran is developing now ballistic missiles that are intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000 kilometer range. What does that mean? They add another 3,000 kilometers and they've got under their atomic guns, the New York City in target, Washington, Boston, Miami, Mar-a-Lago. Okay? So that is a very great danger. You don't want to be under the nuclear gun of these people who are not necessarily rational and who chant death to America.
I mean, it's kind of just disturbing that your so-called friend, your so-called greatest ally, the leader of said nation, goes on camera and talks about, well, it'd be a shame if something happens to New York and Boston, Miami, or Mar-a-Lago if we don't deal with Iran, if we don't strike Iran and their nuclear capabilities. I thought we already did that. I thought we destroyed their nuclear capabilities. But no. Right now, They're building these supersonic missiles that can do far more damage. You mean the nuclear weapons that Israel has, that the United States has, that Russia has, that a lot of countries have, that we have not denuclearized? We actually increased the capabilities of possible nuclear warfare, and it's all because of rhetoric like this? Yeah. But no, let's focus on Iran. Let's scare people into submission. And Netanyahu is doing this intentionally to bait the United States into aggressive warfare. They already did it once in bombing Iran, which Charlie Kirk and others disagree with. That was one of the things that started this kind of tension between him and Donald Trump, was Charlie Kirk did not want bombing of Iran, said that he didn't want it to further escalate. Trump completely ignored that and sided with Bibi on this. And now Bibi is taking the opportunity, knowing that there's going to be a peace agreement, knowing that the hostages are going to be released, so that's going to be closer to ending this war, hopefully, maybe, somewhere down the line. And Netanyahu's saying, no, we gotta go to war with Iran, because there's going to be some threats out there, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I would hate for something to happen to New York or Boston or Miami or Los Angeles or Canada or elsewhere. I would hate for that to happen. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Give me money. Give me power. Give me strength. Let my demon powers escalate so I can further facilitate more war. Just like I told you guys in the 90s to go to war, and you fell for it. Ha 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 ha! I can get away with anything, including changing my name. I mean, what a cruel monster this guy is. And people still take this as the greatest ally. This is our friend. Our friend who blackmailed, deceives, bribes, has a state full of sociopathic, theocratic, insane lunatics roaming the streets, beating up Jewish rabbis, beating up Christians, beating up people. It's not a safe space for anybody, really. Israel is not a safe space for Jewish people. It's not a safe space for Christians. It's not a safe space for anybody. Except maybe if you're a Zionist or a pedophile. Just saying. It works well for them. So that's Netanyahu openly stating that, there might be a possibility of attacks within the United States if they don't, meet to our demands. So that's what's going to get very controversial with this peace negotiation. Here's Trump in his statement now that the hostages have been released. And he's even openly stating how his years as president, how he got into politics, was kind of brought up by a certain individual or a certain pair of individuals. And you may recall that even during his first campaign, during his first run as president, that Trump sided with the Adelsons. And now here he is during his speech openly making statements about how Miriam Adelson, because Sheldon Adelson is no longer with us, that Miriam Adelson helped prop up his ability to become president once again to facilitate further of this genocide. And he's going to pat himself on the back for being exploited by a traitor of the United States. The Adelsons are not for America first. They're not there to support America. They're there to support their agenda, and their agenda is attached to a foreign nation, which that is a conflict of interest right there, folks. Imagine if it was India. Imagine if it was an Arab family. Imagine if that was a Chinese family. People will be up in arms about that. But since it's Miriam Adelson attached to Israel, everything's fine. And if you say something about it, you're anti-Semitic and anti-American. But here's what Trump said.
Broken promises from many other American presidents, you know that. They kept promising. I never understood it until I got there. There was a lot of pressure put on these presidents. It was put on me too, but I didn't yield to the pressure. But every president for decades said, we're going to do it. The difference is I kept my promise and officially recognized the capital of Israel and moved the American embassy to Jerusalem.
So he's pointing right at Miriam Adelson. He's pointing right at his number one donor right there. That's a laundry list of everything that he accomplished that is on her checklist. That's why she gave that big fat check to Trump's campaign. And Trump brags about it, openly brags about it. You know, I got the Golem Heights in 15 minutes. It's so great. Even Domino's couldn't deliver pizzas that fast. For what I can't sell in steaks or real estate or casinos in Atlantic City or selling off my daughter as a pimp, I was able to get the Golem Heights. I was able to get Jerusalem. It's all for you, baby. It's all for you, Miriam.
Isn't that right, Miriam? Look at Miriam. She's back there. Stand up, Miriam. Stand up. Miriam and Sheldon would come into the office. They'd call me. He'd call me. I think they had more trips to the White House than anybody else I can think of. Look at her sitting there so innocently. She's got $60 billion in the bank. $60 billion. And I think she's saying no more. And she loves Israel, but she loves it, and they would come in, and her husband was a very aggressive man, but I loved him. He was a very aggressive, very supportive of me. And he'd call up, can I come over and see you? I say, Sheldon, I'm the president of the United States. It doesn't work that way. He'd come in, we would do. But they were very responsible for so much, including getting me thinking about Golan Heights, which is probably one of the greatest things to ever happen to Israel.
You know, I never really thought of the Golem Heights until Miriam got out that 18-incher, and then once she started pleasuring me, oh man, that's when I started thinking about how precious the Golem Heights are. I mean, how crazy this is. It's one thing that a U.S. president is addressing a speech with the Israeli flag behind him, a foreign flag behind him, but is openly stating that the Adelsons would walk in to the White House, this family worth a fortune, and buy out your commander-in-chief to install and facilitate their goals and agenda ahead of America. And the fact that Trump is winking at the fact that Miriam Adelson loved a lot of Israel, loved a lot of a foreign country compared to things that are happening in America. So this right here, people should know about this for a long time, but this right here is the prime example of how your government is completely captured. Your entire government is completely captured. None of these people represent you. None of these people represent you. Even Trump right there just admitted that he's not for MAGA first. He's for his donors first. And his donors are connected to Israel. So he's MAGA. He's not MAGA. He's MAGA. And he's thanking Miriam Adelson and Sheldon Adelson for being, grouchy people that would walk into the White House and, oh, I never thought about the Golem Heights until, Sheldon Adelson and Miriam Adelson walked in there and, we had a polite conversation, maybe some transfers of money and maybe some blackmail and deceive. We don't know for sure. But then I started thinking, how important it is. Because honestly, just hear me out. Of all the years that Donald Trump has been a figure in American media, all the years that he's hosted The Apprentice, all the years that he's been, a New York titan when it comes to real estate and construction and whatnot, has he once ever thought about Jerusalem, the Golem Heights? Has he ever once thought about Middle Eastern conflicts until this moment where the Adelsons walked in and bribed him? Like, that should say a lot. That should say a lot about, your entire country. They don't live in a democracy. You don't live in a representative republic. You live in an oligarchy. And money talks. Money is the loudest form of politics. That anyone that is a billionaire like the Adelsons can walk in there and just bribe people with a big fat check and slam it right on their desk. And maybe some blackmail, maybe some extortion, who knows for sure, and openly change the views of the sitting commander-in-chief. That Donald Trump, who used to be very anti-war, who came in with the mandate that he was going to end the Gaza war, he was going to end the Ukraine war, he was going to end not going to war with Latin American countries. And now here we are, threatening to blow up Venezuela. Here we are continuing to fund Ukraine. Here we are, not pressuring Netanyahu to follow through on this peace agreement, which Netanyahu is going to violate. So, again, all this is really kind of theatrics. All this is really theatrics. And the fact that Donald Trump is making a statement, the sitting U.S. president is making a statement that Miriam Adelson has control over this issue. And on the issue with a foreign country is just crazy. It's just crazy. Especially all the years that we've been lied to about how Russia's controlling the U.S. and China and India and all these other countries that are meddling in foreign affairs and conflicts of interest. We talk about, but they never talk about Israel. They never talk about this particular nation. They never talk about the direct influence of the Adelsons. They never talk about AIPAC. They never talk about, it's always about other countries, but never, ever, ever about this particular one. I wonder why that is. Anyway, see some rest of this.
Miriam, stand up, please. She really is. I mean, she loves this country. She loves this country. Her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly. But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say.
What? So that's kind of treasonous right there. That's crazy. That a U.S. president is asking his big top donor, who do you support more, America or this foreign country? And she refused to answer, meaning that she's directly involved with a foreign nation. So it's an open bribe, the fact that he's announcing this, but he's openly announcing the fact that this is a treasonous act, that Miriam Adelson, who has loyalty to a foreign country, which you can't even mention really any of this because it's considered anti-Semitic, according to the ADL, according to the International Group of Holocaust Survivors. There's many other groups that, say this is anti-Semitic, but it's also a conflict of interest. It's also illegal in a lot of different ways. It's a violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of America. It's a violation of just national security. Like, imagine if this is Mark Carney doing this on stage, just announcing, hey, this guy over here just bribed me a big fat check, and, he pledges support for Pakistan. Like, people be up in arms. People be going crazy, nuts. There'd be endless investigations on the corruption of that. But not with Israel. Just find it so amazing that all this time, it was right under your nose. It was right this whole time. And I've stated this before, if you want these foreign conflicts to end, one, you got to end the funding. You got to stop creating the terror so that the terror can naturally end, because that's how it ultimately is. It's a machine. It's the military-industrial complex making and manufacturing more wars for continuous warfare for their profit and our disparity. So that's one way you can stop it. The other way is to not accept bribes from nefarious ghouls like the Adelsons, who are complete traitors to the nation. Complete traitors. And Trump's openly laughing and giggling about how much of a joke that is. They just walked in there and bribed me, and we don't even know if they're supportive of America. Stand up, baby. Stand up, doll. Look at you. Look at you. You're so great. You're so great. Funding my campaign after I lied to the American public about how I was going to end the wars, and then I did everything on your checklist. So great. Yeah, that's exactly why people don't really find this celebratory. We'll see where this goes. Like I said, it's a sign of relief that the hostages are saved. That's good. There's a lot more to be done. And between now and whenever the last step of this peace deal actually comes to commence, which I doubt is going to happen, a lot can happen. And we've already seen more destruction, more chaos, and violations throughout, primarily done by Netanyahu and Israel, because they're not gaining pressure. They're not gaining pressure to actually follow through on this peace talk, which is very dangerous.